Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the first DataON Virtual Academy with this very different times that all of us are living today. And for the next 2 to 3 months, I hope less than that, DataON feels the best way for us to continue to have a open communication and sharing with our customers and other customers is really to use a way to deliver the message virtually. So we're able to put together a series of webinar under the DataON Virtual Academy umbrella. And hopefully in the next a month or two, we're able to share information, content, and knowledge with our customers about how we see the IT world and how we see you as decision maker in your enterprise, your environment, are making the choices that's right for you. I'm excited today that we'll kick us off with our first series of a webinar. The title this time is Modernize Your IT with Hybrid Cloud and Hyper-Converged Infrastructure. I'm excited also as well that for our kickoff, I was able to have the pleasure to be presenting along with Rick Klaus. Many of you know him. He is a cloud advocate lead for a team of Microsoft experts and architects that really knows Microsoft in and out across the board. And you see him quite a bit in a lot of events, a lot of social media as kind of the face of the Microsoft in this world to really share their experience from a technical side with our customers. So after my sharing my overview, Rick will take over and kind of talk about how Microsoft sees the world and some of the challenges we face in the marketplace. So without further ado, I'll get started here. And feel free to chat, right? There's a chat button. Feel free to send in your questions between me and Rick. We'll try our best to answer as many as possible to make sure we address them. Some housekeeping item for the webinar. Make sure you are muted during the webinar, open for questions. And we do have social media access for Twitter. So if you need to reach us directly, you can reach us via at Rick, CDN, or at HHLO72 at DataON. Okay, so I continue to talk about the concept of a journey, right, at the hybrid cloud journey, but more and more as we look at the marketplace and talking to customers, we really are seeing that one of our good partners, Microsoft Azure, is really a great option to really deliver that hybrid cloud journey, and that's kind of the technology that we want to share today with our customer base. To start off with, in that journey, I think it's important to understand that there are a lot of decision-making factors as you look at the hybrid cloud journey, and these are very, very critical roadmaps that we believe our customers need to embark upon when they take on this journey. And different customers are at different level and different paths of achieving this journey. But as I talk to IT customers, to analysts and briefing, we see 5 big pillars that we believe that as an end user, you should really, really look at these 5 aspects of a decision-making factor. Number one is the fact that there are a lot of legacy apps and infrastructure in place. How do you ensure that these applications are being addressed or accounted for as you look at the hybrid cloud experience and hybrid cloud infrastructure? How are the old Oracle apps that's running on specific application can be migrated into the new technology? So managing legacy app infrastructure is one of the critical piece of decision-making factor as you go down this particular roadmap. The second is really defining what is the application strategy? Do I want some of the application reside in the cloud? Do I want to reside on premises or both, right? Different customer has different decision factors. I see that a lot of customers want to put their website, web app on the cloud and keep SQL and databases on premise. So depending on your workload and your application, it's very important to understand what is the order of the app strategy for cloud and on-premises, or is it really hybrid, right? So these are another decision factor from a cloud versus on-premise perspective. Consolidation and really infrastructure consolidation security is very important. Clearly software-defined storage networking, compute are all way to consolidate, and especially with Microsoft Azure Stack HCI, we believe is a great way to consolidate your infrastructure or aging legacy infrastructures. So looking at that as an important aspect of your journey. Modernizing app, as many of you know, Kubernetes and containers are really a way that people are seeing the future to really delivering these applications in a containerized form versus a VM. But really, taking a really serious look on container and Kubernetes is a very important aspect as you continue that journey. Ultimately, as you continue these decision making, we believe you'll see that once you have these figured out, you can really embrace the concept of hybrid cloud and Azure anywhere. As you continue the journey, I just want to share some number with you that is from the analyst that really defines the fact that there's definitely these trends that's happening. Number one, from a market perspective, the ACI market, Hyper-Converged Infrastructure market, is about a $12 billion market, right? And it's growing. Kubernetes size by 2025 by IDC is $8.2 billion marketplace. So that number might not mean much other than the fact that there are a lot of people out there looking at Kubernetes container as a way to deploy their modernized app and modernization. Whether or not hybrid cloud is the right strategy, a lot of market leaders are looking at that. ESG says 91% of the IT decision makers are looking at hybrid cloud, some on cloud, some on premises. But what is that split and what is the benefit? These are important decision factors. Data continue to grow, which we all know, and it's huge. And more importantly, in terms of IT infrastructure, we ourselves are seeing many of them going to the edge. The intelligent edge and remote offices, a lot of our solutions today are really deployed to the edge to run those edge applications for optimization. So these are just numbers for our audience to consider as you look at this continued journey with the hybrid cloud. This is a very interesting slide that I put together talking to customers are saying that, hey, it's not a cloud or a non-cloud discussion. It's really looking at what is driving the hybrid cloud. Right? With the announcement of Microsoft Azure Arc, hybrid cloud services, it really is a game changer, which I'm sure Rick will go into a little bit. It's showing that your ability to have a layer of management platform that allows you to have a multi-cloud environment, plus have the ability to manage multiple type of infrastructure, whether or not it's a cloud infrastructure, whether or not it's a on-premises production workload infrastructure with Azure Stack HCI, whether or not it's converting those legacy infrastructure you have today to leverage the cloud services or on the edge. But having that layer really allow you to transcend the way that you manage and access those infrastructure across the board. But more importantly on the bottom is really data governance, ability to make sure that these data that you are managing has secure access, making sure you're protecting your data, your backup, your DR, and making sure data governance are the key criteria. And DataON as a company will continue to drive these applications and these governance as we work with our customer in their enterprise deployments. Ultimately, from our perspective, in the short term, we believe Microsoft Azure Stack HCI is a great solution that we've been working with our customer base to deploy. And these solutions are really a combination of a set of platforms that you design with DataON for your architecture, for your workload, running Windows Server, and also using Windows Admin Center and extension with Must to really manage that platform and really have ability to take advantage of cloud services. This combination of these ingredients are what we believe are the true delivery of Microsoft Azure Stack HCI. And in fact, many of you that are new to Microsoft, you probably don't realize today, if you have a Windows Server data center license already, you already have the Microsoft Azure Stack HCI stack in the Windows Server data center license, which is pretty incredible. DataON continued to take a leadership position on delivering the Microsoft solution, and these are just a sample of different vertical customer application workload that we have deployed in the last 12 months across the board. And you can see many customer bases in a federal enterprise, state, local government enterprise leveraging the benefit of Windows Server licenses, banking, financial organization, manufacturing, medical offices, for databases. So you can see the same application that we're looking at are really deployed across multiple vertical and multiple workloads to ensure the reliability and solution as these customers continue to make that journey towards hypercloud and consolidated infrastructure. What I'll do now is pass over to Rick Klaus, who will take you through this journey from the Microsoft point of view. Go ahead, Rick.
Thanks a lot, Howard. Hey, everybody. It's good to see everyone that's decided to come onto the call. It's been quite good so far. Again, if you have the opportunity, there is the ability to ask some questions if you wanted to throughout with the chat capabilities. We'll try our best to stay on touch with what's going on there. Howard reached out to ask if I could be able to participate and help out in this kind of conversation to kind of share a little bit about where we see hybrid going and what are our customers asking for to be able to go and start to work in this new world. I mean, things are increasingly complex all across the board in everyone's environment. It doesn't matter if you're a very small and business with a number of different sites, or if you're a very large business with thousands of things that are going on. Generally speaking, you've got some level of applications running inside of your environment. Traditionally, they're going to be found on top of VMs. They also could be on bare metal machines and things like that. They can be in a variety of different types of platforms and development platforms and backgrounds. But we recognize the fact that everybody's environment is unique and that they come with their own individual complexities that are out there. And then you combine into that with a wide range of different types of infrastructure that people are running inside of their environments right now, with either running their own data centers, having branch offices, having individual hosters that are looking after things for them as well. All these different things means there are multiple points that you have to look for and worry about managing going on in the future. Then you throw in this extra layer of public cloud that you can now expand into and start to use, or you're exploring this option, and you have a number of different choices, and possibly you're going to choose some services from Azure. Maybe you might have some other projects that are going to be based out of AWS, or you might even be exploring Google Cloud for all we know. Either way, the role of the IT professional, the role of the infrastructure companies and infrastructure teams within companies is really how are they going to get their handle around managing all of this and keeping tabs on all this and keeping it all up and running. Microsoft's realized that, for the most part, organizations are very much planning on maintaining a presence in their own data centers, running data center pieces for different workloads that make sense to still continue to stay on premises, but they're going to be exploring hybrid services. And people are now coming to the table to ask us more questions about how can they leverage some of the capabilities of a public cloud for hyperscale convergence, and how to bring these different services down and also share data and services back up with those different hyperscale clouds. And that brings opportunities, for instance, being able to have very easy offsite backup and disaster recovery capabilities. It makes it so you can have scale to be able to look at doing machine learning around threat detection and log analytics and things like that, possibly expanding your storage from on-premises up into the cloud environment. All these are valid things that people are now exploring to see, is this something that can work for me? How can I integrate this into my existing environment the most? So I want to step back for just a moment and kind of explain a little bit about what we see as being the hybrid platform that you can use when you're partnering with someone like Microsoft and exploring bringing different pieces of the Azure environment into your environment. So obviously, if you're exploring the use of public cloud all up, you're going to be looking at having an interface for using the Azure portal, using command line tools, and using the basic stacks of infrastructure as a service and platform as a service as a place to be able to go off and get your feet wet working with a public cloud provider. Think of this like as an extension of your existing data center and tools and resources for where you can land different workloads. Now, people are exploring options for being able to have similar capabilities to what they're expecting with one of the products that we make available called Azure Stack, and now it's called Azure Stack Hub for how we've rebranded it now to have the Azure Stack family as a whole since last November. And that basically is bringing down the same types of interfaces, the same types of APIs, and the same types of services as what you would expect inside of an Azure environment into your on-premises environment inside your own data centers. And that's a very managed footprint of hardware that specifically is identified and working with a hyper-converged infrastructure with a software-defined storage, software-defined networking, and using various different hardware platform partners like DataON and others to be able to go off and to make and use and work with Azure Stack. Now, the next level up for virtualized applications is something that we are working with known as Azure Stack HCI solutions, where it doesn't have the same control plane as what you'd be working with. That brings in more flexibility. That brings in native tools that you're used to using right now on premises to be able to go off and to manage those and still take advantage of being able to kind of pull down the pieces that you need from Azure environment into your own environment too. Still working with hyper-converged infrastructure, still working with industry standard hardware, still working with great partners like DataON and others to be able to go off and to bring in Azure Stack HCI. The main difference is the control plane and also footprint size of what's involved, and therefore as well flexibility for what you're going to be working with an HCI type of solution. And if I kind of peel back this even one more layer, if I'm looking at the Azure environment, I look at it as services that I can go and use on demand across a number of regions around the world that I can use right now, hundreds of different services. If I look at Azure Stack, in there I'm primarily going to be using it for my personal workloads. It's going to be mostly around the VM space. I can also bring down and use Azure Resource Manager as my management plane and my tools. I still have access to pre-made solutions from partners in Azure Marketplace. But then if I take a look at Azure Stack HCI, that's where I'm going to be looking at using tools that are tied into those different services using Windows Admin Center, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But for the most part, I'm only going to be using stuff that are solving specific pain points like a backup capability, like a site recovery capability, monitoring, log analytics and scale and stuff like that, while maintaining workloads on premises inside of my environment right now, inside of my own data centers. Now, to talk about this management piece that is in there, the concept of Azure Arc was something that we introduced back in the November timeframe for something we've been working on. And this kind of topology layer looks at working with Azure itself and how you go off and manage the control plane for different resources. You've got yourself and the Azure customer base. They're using the basic portal. They're using the Azure Cloud Shell. They're using different command line tools and even API sets to be able to go off and to interface and work with these different systems. Architecturally, you're talking to what's known as the Azure Resource Manager and the compute providers, the security providers, the storage providers to be able to go off and to provide those different services that you would then go off and tie into. Now, notice that there's like 4 boxes: access and security, organizational and inventory, environments and automation, and governance and compliance. The concept of Azure Arc is basically being able to go in and to still provide you with those main building blocks of access and security, environments and automation, organizational and inventory, and governance and compliance. But bringing that to wherever you need it, it could be on premises inside of an Azure Stack HCI virtual machine solution. It could be inside of your Kubernetes containers in your container environment on premises or different orchestrators. It could also even be individual data and data store sources that you're working with as well. But it's the same level of policy, same level of access and security that we're building up to be able to work inside of this environment. So basically, wherever your resources happen to be, the Arc solution is going to be something you can then tie into. Going down an additional level, to kind of look at this architecturally, in the Azure world, you've actually got something that's known as the guest agent installed on those different resources that allows it to feed into Azure Resource Manager and feed into those different monitoring and management solutions. You also have possibly VM extensions that give you extra functionality to be able to go off and do stuff. Azure Arc for servers provides that same functionality and that same common interface to machines that are running on premises, machines that are running in other people's clouds, and other solutions running inside of other hybrid solutions and partner solutions as well. The idea is that we're building this foundation you can then go in and add off into. In the past, you used to have to install individual agents, one for the ability to do log analytics, one for backup, one for identifying security, one for shipping your logs. Now it's just the Azure Arc environment that you bring down, which acts as a framework for all of this to individually work with your different systems. The main takeaways, as I mentioned, are those 4 buckets. We now bring you a single control plane for your resources on premises and also inside of other people's clouds to be able to identify and work with your inventory, look at change control, look at logs and look at the log analytics that are taking place. It doesn't matter where they happen to be hosted. They can now be brought up inside of the Azure environment, and you can now use the Azure environment to do queries, to manage it, to look for issues, to manage updates and things like that. The governance and security piece is rather interesting. That's being fleshed out more as we speak, where you're now able to go through and put in different policies and rules in place for who is able to go in and to deploy different resources, even if they're inside of your on-premises world or inside of a different cloud provider, to be able to control what size machines people can spin up, what type of services they're allowed to go off and to use based on who they authenticate into these different services. So we're bringing a level of compliance and policy across the board. Role-based access basically is the complementary to that. And then obviously the central place to manage and look at scale, to be able to do fast queries and searches, leverage your centralized information to be able to do queries against it, to do log analytics and the like, and also be able to go through and organize your different resources based on workloads and based on different criteria. So bringing this together with Azure Stack HCI, you're now looking at an environment where you've got a truly hybrid data center, which has your existing familiar infrastructure you're working with right now, tied into different services inside of Microsoft Azure to be able to go off and to bring these resources into your environment to solve those different problems that you happen to have. So transitioning over to the Azure Stack HCI piece, this is the piece, as Howard mentioned, that you have access to if you already have data center licenses and you talk to a provider like DataON to be able to provide you with some of this industry standard hardware. It gives you the ability to have this hybrid operations to readily deploy compute or storage or virtualized networking in your environment up and tied into different resources inside the Azure space. The hybrid operations piece, as I mentioned, there's some of these different services that come up. The ones that I'm getting the most requests about and conversations about when I'm on the road talking to people at different conferences is around some of the very basic, what I call building blocks of some hybrid services. I need to go in and do some very simple backup. I'm looking to explore being able to set up a disaster recovery and business continuity environment. How can I do that? Because in the past it was very difficult using different services. I can now get this done a lot easier. Being able to go through and set up and work with different levels of management, which include the log analytics piece, the update piece across Windows and Linux, the ability to go through and look at security vulnerabilities and issues, configuration issues, that sort of stuff. That's where the hybrid operations come into play, with being able to bring down these low-level services from Azure and bring them down inside of your on-premises environment for the place where they work both in your hybrid data center and also with your machines up inside of Azure. The hybrid integration pieces, one area that I find I get a lot of questions of besides your traditional backup and also site recovery is one that is truly of actual hybrid capability that has been very popular, which is Azure File Sync. Azure File Sync will take an existing file server that's potentially starting to run out of space. Doesn't matter if it's attached into a SAN or if it's locally attached storage. That individual file server can have Azure File Sync installed with it and configured up inside of Azure to allow it to basically have a cache and a policy of what it's going to keep local to the local environment for users to have access. You set the policy if it's going to be a space policy based on always keep 50% free, or if it's going to be like a date policy to keep only the hot and more recently used individual files local, as opposed to the rest of the files where they can then go and migrate up into the Azure Files environment. Azure File Sync handles that for you and will dynamically move stuff back and forth as people need to have access to it. Very simple to deploy. It gives you virtually 100 terabytes per share that you enable with Azure File Sync up inside of the Azure environment, and it's very simple to administer. Windows Admin Center with solutions like Azure Stack HCI paired together with a virtualized file server, as an example, is able to go in and to do all the configurations and setting up as required, all from that one web-based interface console of the Admin Center for being able to. Fantastic solution. Get a lot of questions about this all the time for where people are looking at. From Azure Stack connecting up and working with this from a data center perspective, Azure Stack HCI, as it scales out to a number of different nodes, you choose the size, you choose the footprint for what you're looking for specifically, essentially is a combination of a version of Hyper-V for providing you with virtualized compute, a storage spaces direct from a storage perspective to be able to give you storage as required, highly available across multiple nodes. And then also tying in the virtualized networking for software-defined networking piece for being able to go and have connectivity to various different virtual networks that have connections back up into Azure or elsewhere to provide you with access to these different services. From a software, now switching over to a hardware perspective, all these different HCI solutions are available from a number of different partners. We're here talking on behalf of our partnership of working with folks like DataON for their particular types of hardware that they make available. Howard's going to have some more conversation about this after I'm done talking about this architecture. But basically, it comes into a whole range of validated solutions, meet your performance expectations. You dial in exactly the size, format, and capabilities that you need for your different workloads to be able to go off and deploy them. Ultimately, what this is, if you take it and peel it back to layers, it's a pairing or a cluster of different Windows-based servers that are connected together with a common management interface of the Windows Admin Center that allow you to provide you the services of software-defined networking, software-defined storage, or software-defined compute that deploys using tools that you're used to using to be able to go off and to provide you with those different workloads that you need to have inside of your environment. They go through the validation, they do all the legwork to make sure these things arrive in a pre-configured, valid configuration for you to go in. Very simple kind of setup required once you onboard these inside of your environment. Each vendor's different. I've been through this stuff with what DataON provides you with. It's a very nice set of PowerShell commands to go through and do validation, naming conventions to make them nice and simple, and then actual configuration of those different and building of those different clusters as required. Great way to be able to go off and get that done. And they come with a bunch of expertise for how to be able to go off and set that up with you. Now, from the scenarios and the solutions that we see.
Hey, Rick, I remember you actually did a little video on Twitter on the unboxing of some of the solutions you did recently.
No, definitely, and you're kind of calling me out. I was going to be making some of these available to you and also to the rest of the world if they're interested. Besides just the unboxing, the part that I'm actually trying to fine-tune right now is a little bit around the setup piece, because that's the part people ask the most about. What is the setup like to be able to get one of these boxes up and running? So I'm going through both the version of doing the PowerShell deploy that you folks provide from the DataON perspective, but then also I'm going to be doing some of the preview stuff with using the Windows Admin Center to be able to go off and do the deployment as well, because they work hand in hand. You got some prep work that's PowerShell, but then you've got a nice GUI interface to be able to set this up. It's way simpler than the old days of having to do Microsoft Failover Cluster Manager to be able to configure the shared volumes and all that kind of junk. It's much, much easier now using both the PowerShell methodology you guys are using, plus also the Windows Admin Center pieces as well. So stay tuned for more, and I'll make sure to provide everybody with those links. Now, with Azure Stack HCI solutions, basically, as we mentioned here, providing you either with on-demand storage without having to go and break the bank with buying all these ginormous SANs to be able to connect into it. It's great for branch offices and remote offices where you have to have a minimal footprint but still highly available virtual machines being served up for different workloads. It also can work inside of a very large data center and get quite large on the scale side because of what we have, what's known as cluster sets, to be able to actually cluster your clusters together with common namespaces. To be able to go off and do that with 2019 is now possible. So we can tier quite large with the business critical data infrastructure. Consolidation as well is another workload that people will go through and start to look at consolidating down the different virtualization platforms they have, the different point solutions that they have to one single interface, and then be able to prepare to deliver those up into possibly migrating those workloads up into Azure. Then also obviously as a VDI infrastructure as well for being able to avoid virtual desktops, especially in these times when you have to worry about being able to provide remote capability services to our individual end users. Now, as I mentioned, the ones that I find the most in conversations when I was previously off on the road touring around with what's known as Microsoft Ignite the Tour, the main scenarios that I've seen for Azure Stack HCI has come down to really these kind of three little sweet spots. The first one is refreshing of aging hardware. If you're looking to go off and have some kind of a virtual machine Pez dispenser, if you will, to handle your compute, to be able to go off and to look after those workloads, but for now you're going to keep it on premises, as opposed to looking at using some of the stuff inside of the cloud environment for Azure from an IaaS perspective. an HCI solution of a couple of nodes that does enough compute and memory intensive work, but then has fast I/O capabilities in the back end, is a really good platform to be able to go off and to do virtualization from. They're able to go through and make an investment as opposed to having to go through and completely replace some SAN-connected Hyper-V hosts or some SAN-connected hypervisor hosts in the back end. The second one comes down to doing an awful lot, again, of server consolidation of infrastructure, giving you the base platform to be able to provide compute as required, attached into that fast storage in the back end, to then be able to start looking at possibly doing some migrations and migration plans. And then finally, the part that really is the sweet spot for me is using Windows Admin Center to be able to continue to manage your systems on premises, continue to work with those different workloads and troubleshoot those different things, but then be able to go in and very easily tie into your Azure subscriptions to bring down some of those backups, to bring down some of those capabilities of doing some monitoring and start to dabble in looking at how to do stuff. An example that's actually really cool with this was actually something my friend Ned Pyle from the Storage Migration Services PM team has come up with, where they've actually made it now so if you're looking at an older file server, you want to now move the content over to a new file server. Storage Migration Services is run through and managed through Windows Admin Center. It allows you to go through and target your old system, target the old shares, target a new system, but the new system now can actually even be a virtual machine that is built inside of Azure. So you don't even have to have a VM running on premises for your target file server. You can actually have this built for you inside of Azure directly from the tools using Windows Admin Center as the interface to be able to do it. It will automatically size your VM, make the appropriate storage, and work with that to be able to do that migration, and then continue with that process of doing that migration and the cutover. Because it's using software-defined networking, it then is able to go in and make that file server appear, even though it is inside of Azure, appear as though it is still inside of your on-premises LAN and on-premises networks to be able to have clients have access to. So these are some of the HCI stack solutions I'm seeing right now. HCI is the platform foundation for giving you your software-defined storage, software-defined compute, and software-defined network to enable some of these different scenarios. And then Windows Admin Center is the part that allows you to interface and work with it. All this runs on top of Azure Stack HCI solutions from partners like DataON. The Azure Stack HCI, I've left a couple of different links on here if you want to take a look at the official documentation with regards to where you can find more details on the HCI side. I didn't talk about Azure Stack Hub, which is a different solution, which gives you those same API calls, those same management tools as what you'd be using inside of Azure. That's a different solution that we can talk about at a different time, but it is part of the Azure Stack family, obviously. And then also Azure Stack Edge, which is some of these Edge nodes boxes you can go off and use as well. That's for another time as well. We've decided to focus with this one to focus specifically on the HCI area for where you can go off and use and install and work with Server 2019, deploy management with Windows Admin Center, and then also talk about Azure Arc. I am going to be completely honest on the Azure Arc side. This is still technology that's evolving. It has preview functionality now to bring you the most common scenarios available to your on-premises world and your multi-cloud worlds as well. There's some good stuff coming out of the Azure Arc environment in the very near future, and azure.com/hybrid is the place to find out most of that information. And because you're probably looking for some more detailed information on Arc, the team that was going off and building Azure Arc that talked about its release back in November has a recorded 45-minute session specifically on the low-level architectures for how Arc works, what our vision is for that particular solution, how it's going to work in your hybrid environment and in your multi-cloud environment at aka.ms/DataON Azure Arc. Another one, if you're interested in the Azure Stack HCI, I'm a particular big fan of Cosmos from the Azure Stack HCI team, who did a fantastic 45 things you need to know in 45 minutes on Azure Stack HCI. That's at aka.ms/DataON Azure Stack HCI. And then finally, I have to do some self-promotion here. As Howard mentioned at the very beginning, I've got a team of 7 folks around the world that go off and create videos, create content, do webinars like this, as well as do video interviews. We put all that stuff on a team blog that we run, which is known as itopstalk.com. And you're welcome to go through and obviously to go ahead and connect with me and my team anytime you like. One of the ways that we do this the most is actually using Twitter. My Twitter name is RicksterCDN. You saw it at the very beginning. But also, we follow a hashtag in case you have questions. Ongoing, wherever you happen to be, whatever time it happens to be in the world. The hashtag that we follow is AZOps. All one word, hashtag AZOps. So if you use that, kind of like a bat signal, if you have any questions, throw them out to that particular hashtag, and you got a bunch of us that watch that around the clock, around the world, be able to come back and engage with you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Howard to talk a little bit more about some of those building blocks that DataON's making for Azure Stack HCI and the Azure Stack environment, and then possibly take some questions at the very end. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thanks, Rick. That was really, really awesome. Great content, a lot of good stuff. I'm sure there were a lot of questions in the audience, and we'll take some questions at the end. So I'll spend the next 10 minutes kind of going through some of the building blocks that DataON offers to our enterprise customers on Azure Stack HCI and really the hybrid cloud infrastructure. Just as a background for those who doesn't know who we are, DataON has been around for about 30 years in Southern California. We are focused exclusively as a Microsoft partner delivering solutions in hybrid cloud services around Microsoft. But more importantly, as a vendor, we partner very closely with the industry leader and specifically with Intel because all our hardware and technology are delivered by Intel as a complete solution where DataON take to the validation. We also put together some value-added services with our software called Must, which really extends the capability of managing, monitoring, and ability to help you get alerts based on your requirement for the Azure Stack HCI platform. So definitely come to our website and take a look at all the capability we have. As we continue to look at this, I always make a joke that the solution that we deliver based on Microsoft is like one of the best kept secret. It's a great technology that's been around since 2012 or storage spaces. And finally, last year, they actually came out and they won an award with Storage Review, where they won the Editor Choice Award for the Product of the Year, which is very excited about. It's based on a DataON platform. But more importantly, from a Gartner perspective, in the Magic Quadrant, Microsoft clearly, even though they're new to this market, they're recognized as a visionary, and visionary right behind those market leaders like the Nutanix and the VMware of the world. So definitely from both from an industry perspective and from an analyst perspective, Microsoft is absolutely being recognized as one of the premier solutions out there. As we continue this journey with our customer, DataON continue to evolve as a vendor that delivers solution services, right? Today, many of our solutions are replacing aging SANs, aging infrastructure with a software-defined solution from Microsoft called the Microsoft Azure Stack HCI. But more importantly, as we go into customer, we want to make sure the solution we deliver is really a complete turnkey solution that really addresses not just the on-premise workload, but business continuity, continuity with backup, continuity about disaster recovery and security. In the last half year, DataON really has ventured out and worked closely with our customer and many of the big customers to deliver that end-to-end solution, where we go in and have a on-premise solution plus delivering a backup solution, plus doing migration services across the board from VMware to Hyper-V and building a DR site. All these capabilities are monetized and recognized through our knowledge base about our customers' needs and their workloads. But more importantly, as we continue to add value, we have software and monitoring tools to help our customer as an extension of Windows Admin Center to have that visibility in the infrastructure across the board. With Azure Arc, clearly now you have the ability to have multi-cloud and looking at multi-sites, which is very important. But lastly, as we continue to take on the hyper-cloud journey, DataON is also a cloud service provider. Our ability to deliver hyper services to help customer bridge on-premise and the Azure cloud to have Azure backup, Azure site recovery, Azure DR, all important capabilities we want to make sure that we offer to our customer as a complete solution. Must is a very critical tool that DataON deliver and build ourselves. which allows us to extend the capability to have that visibility in infrastructure. We could do alert services, we could do disk mapping, we could do monitoring call home services if you have a disk failure. All these are feature and capability that DataON continue to add as an extension to Microsoft capability with the Windows Admin Center. But more importantly, at the end of the day, we deliver that infrastructure for our customer, making sure that the solution we provide are the leading edge. And that is really driven by the fact that we work with a leading edge vendor like Intel. All the hardware we deliver, the server, the 1UTU server, the SSD, the Optane technology, are all based on Intel solution. Intel is a hardware manufacturer of the DataON solution for Azure Stack HCI. All the solution, they're building it. They're the one that doing the cable, the backplane, the motherboard, the chassis, all manufactured here within Intel. And we take that and do the certification with Microsoft and deliver the support services and capability with our customer. Right? And all these solutions are Intel Select validated as a solution. And more importantly, we work closely with our partner like Mellanox, Western Digital to deliver that complete solution, which right now, there's a record of 13.8 million IOPS with the Azure Stack HCI solution. There are many use cases, and I would encourage many of you to go to our website when you get a chance to look at these use cases that shows that really Azure Stack HCI is really a mainstream product that really could address the workload you need based on your environment. We see customer deploying a 2-node for SQL performance, and they see 3x of performance with a 2-node solution with the all-flash NVMe solution. We have customers that deploy entire solution replacing the ICRT SAN, like a Cherokee County. We do have 2 sites active, essentially running their entire school today on the Azure Stack environment and really delivering that complete services across the board. We have customers such as Trident that has edge. They have 2 nodes edge replacing 2 server that's disaggregated. Now they have HA, and they can monitor to Azure Admin Center. They have a robo solution for the edge where they see reliability, resiliency with a 2-node solution across multiple sites. We also see converged storage, which allows you to have a complete storage scale out to managing cloud platform. One of the great customer we have is a Canadian museum, which they've really been evaluating this for a long time, and they really went out and deployed an Azure-based solution, Azure Stack solution based on Microsoft DataON to run their data center today for a truly a hybrid cloud environment. So you can see that there are many, many different customers in multiple sectors that's embracing the concept of Microsoft and Microsoft Hybrid Cloud and Azure Stack HCI. I encourage all the customers to go look at it. Look at our website. There's 50+ use cases that really address the different pain points that you are experiencing today that you can see how it relates to you. So I would encourage you guys to partner with DataON and go on this hybrid cloud journey. We have customers that went from 2012 to 2016, and now they're migrating from 2016 to 2019. But more importantly, we have other customers looking at Azure Stack HCI today and really deploying that complete Azure services. This is an evolution, this is a journey, this is a roadmap that our customer have chosen to work with Microsoft, Azure Stack HCI, and DataON for the last 10 years. And we see this journey continuing as Microsoft continue to add value on top of their solution. In this journey, finally, DataON has really garnered a lot of knowledge and knowledge base to help our customer, and that knowledge really, catapult us to be a true Microsoft partner, both as a Go partner and a cloud service provider. We have now over 150 petabytes of storage in production. And also, more importantly, we partner closely with these industry leaders like Intel to make sure this solution are the right solution for our customer for their workloads. So that ends the presentation today, and we'll go on Q&A. But before I do that, I want to make sure you understand we do have another, DataON virtual academy session next Tuesday. We're going to do this very regularly. And the next Tuesday session, our colleagues, Henry and our partner, Intel, will be delivering the next level of understanding and really going in more detail about what is Azure Stack HCI and the entire technology infrastructure and the component of the solution to see how it's deployed in your environment. So I will go back a little bit, see if we have any Q&A. Rick, anything to add? To make sure our audience could get a good understanding before we end the sessions?
I mean, I think you've kind of covered the broad spectrum of the different services and products that DataON basically makes available for their customers. I'm glad you had some customer references in there too. That's awesome to see where people are getting some value from it. The important part is really this is available now. It's on proven technology, and it's with stuff that you're used to using inside of your on-premises world and your current world right now. And folks can basically go off and start to use this as soon as they procure some hardware to be able to run it on. It's fantastic. Very low barrier to be able to get it up and running. And you get to see some immediate value on what you're trying to accomplish for those different workloads.
That's great. Yeah, and this is a great way to kind of end this session. We do have the next session. We thank you, Rick, for coming on. It was a great sharing about content. I'm sure a lot of people have gotten a lot of good value out of this, and hopefully we'll get you back sooner than you think.
No problems whatsoever. Now, again, this has been recorded, so people will be able to see this after the fact too, correct?
Absolutely, and a lot of people will go back and look at Bright Talk, and we'll make sure we send it out on Twitter, which you're very active at, and make sure that people could continue to look at the content to understand more about the technology.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. That ends our session, and looking forward to chatting you guys soon with our Virtual Academy. Thank you.